Welcome everyone to Beat Around the Blockchain. On this very special episode, I have the privilege of hosting the one and only president of VeeFriends, Andy Krainak. Andy, how are you?
Doing very well, Gabriel. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Hey, thank you for agreeing to show up. I was really pumped when I happened to be scrolling on Twitter at the moment you posted the AMA. I'm like, why ask him one question when I could ask him quite a few? So was really pumped and geeking out when you
It's
agreed to be on.
a smart approach. I love it.
Awesome, man. Well, let's get right into it. A lot of the people who are looking forward to this episode are going to have some background on you. There's also going to be a lot of people that don't have a ton of context around who Andy Krainak is. So would love you to give just a little bit of a starter of what your journey has been like, both in the Vayner world as well as just you in general. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, personally, I've always been an ambitious, creative, caring individual. I'm the youngest of three. I have two older brothers. I was born in New Mexico, actually, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I moved with my mom and my brothers to Northern Virginia.
Okay.
My father still stayed in New Mexico, so every summer I would travel back and forth from Virginia to New Mexico with my brothers. And I use that as like an exemplary version of who I am because it just taught me a lot about the different cultures of the United States. In Virginia, actually, Fairfax County is one of the most diverse counties in America. And it wasn't until actually I traveled more outside the US and across the US that I realized just how grateful I am to have the experience that I had growing up. I graduated from Virginia Tech. At Virginia Tech, probably the most popular professor on campus, his name is John Boyer. I think if you hit YouTube search and you type in like John Boyer Wine Library TV, you'll find a video of this class of Hokies, Virginia Tech students, inviting the wine guru, Gary Vaynerchuck, to Virginia Tech campus. That's because there's a wine course that this professor teaches where
Yep.
people actually have to watch Wine Library TV videos and take online quizzes about how does Gary Vaynerchuk describe this wine. I took that course, and that's actually how I first learned of Gary. Wasn't a fan of jets, and I wasn't super into wine,
What
but
made you take the course then?
because I was interested enough to learn about wine, and I
Mm.
needed an extra credit to graduate, and I had already taken the class of John Boyer's, which is I think it's the largest class on the campus, which is a version of geopolitics. It's like geography mixed with politics, and he teaches the class through a comic book actually,
Huh.
and it's why he's a really relatable teacher, and why you probably put the students onto Gary because he's just really contemporary. When you
Yeah.
take so many other classes, he was the one teacher who was actually using the internet in a relevant way. This is 2010,
Yeah.
but it's why he wanted to use Gary to help teach wine because wine typically people would talk down to you about it. It's like can be
Yeah.
really stiffy, and that's really how Gary broke through. He was wearing Nikes and cussing and be like, if you drink it, it's good.
Yeah.
Um, so he attracted me enough to want to follow him online. I was like, I'll check him out. So I followed him on Twitter, graduated school, traveled abroad. It was an incredible experience to learn. I taught English in Thailand and I coached basketball in China. I
Oh
came
wow.
home, was ready to start my own business, learn about more digital marketing, entrepreneurship, and I watched this video from Gary, and I was like, shit, this dude knows what's up. He was just communicating about Facebook and marketing and the internet and how he thinks about growing businesses in a way that I hadn't heard any other speaker talk. And it really resonated with me. And I sort of looked myself in the mirror in that moment in time. I'm like, okay, I don't think I can really build the business that I want to build by myself right now. I really need to go work from someone that I love and trust and admire, and I can still be myself. I'm not gonna have to wear a suit and tie and play a game that I want to play. And right after I watched that video, I was like, I want to work for this guy. He tweeted, "What can I do for you?" And I responded, "A chance to work for free." 3 months later, he emailed me and said he wanted to hire me. I was an intern for his book, Jab, 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 Right Hook the book. I manned a Twitter account, basically interacting with people on Twitter that tweeted at Gary, told them about the book. And that's how I got started at Vayner. Facebook at the time didn't have videos, it didn't have ads. So once those two things came on the platform, Instagram didn't really matter at the time. Once Facebook had video and had ads, there was a real tool set that had yet to be utilized by any marketer that I feel like I could really understand and use it as a skill that I could have. At the time, I'm just like, I'm hungry, I'm motivated.
Right.
I had some creative skills, but I didn't have something that I felt like I could stick to my resume or really grow my career with at Vayner. So once those two things came out on Facebook, I tried to understand everything I could about video marketing on social media and running digital ads on Facebook.
Isn't there something special about that jab, 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 right hook Twitter account that you manned?
It's now Team Gary V Twitter account.
That's what it is. I remember it turned into something, but I was like, I think Gary always had his own
I
account.
love, I think it was wannabe VeeFriends Jeremy who had mentioned it. It's such a fun fact to me because
Yeah.
like that Twitter account to me is like one of the closest things to my heart in my career in Vayner.
Yeah.
Also, so is Team Gary V. That's what I did for 9 years, 8 years of my life. Try to grow and develop a brand under Gary, and then almost we had a mini brand under Gary of like young, aspiring creatives and marketers who really wanted to learn from Gary, such as myself, and to see the team that it is today, to know that we have a Twitter account that was once manned by me as the intern. It's just really, really cool, and I think it speaks to like a lot of the ethos of VaynerX and the companies that Gary's built.
So there's been a lot of evolution internally at Vayner for you, from pretending to be a book to helping grow what's now known as Team Gary V, and obviously now being the president of VeeFriends. A lot of things have happened and grown and changed, both for the tool set that you guys use internally to grow the business, as well as for you personally. What have some of those like defining moments been for you over the last decade of being in the Vayner ecosystem?
It's a really good question. There's defining moments in time when a platform emerges. Like for instance, when Facebook ads came out, it changed VaynerMedia and almost every other business. I don't think people realize how Facebook ads is responsible for billion-dollar businesses, Wish.com, things of that nature, and also just a lot of e-commerce startups. But my initial reaction to your question, that's not platforms and new tech updates, is key hires. I've had the privilege of 3 or 4 people that came on specifically to work with me on Team Gary that I learned a tremendous amount from. And they impact how I think about strategy, business, operations, hiring today.
Yeah, well, the goal initially was you wanted to be an entrepreneur. You wanted to start your own business, do it in something creative. You go into this trip with Gary, and all of a sudden you're now more on the employee side than the entrepreneur side, but it's also very early back then, right? So you get the best of both worlds without taking on all the risk. So what has kept you around to continue to learn and develop and set aside, or something internal that is fulfilling that need to be an entrepreneur in the sense of how people look at it today of like, I'm going to work for myself?
Yeah, I mean a lot. Like one, and most importantly, is my trust and belief in who Gary is and what he's building. There was times I took a step back and I'm like, okay, is now when I want to leave? Do I want to go do my own thing? And the answer was always no. It was like I just really believed in what Gary was building, and I couldn't have been closer to it. And I could see not just the business impact he was making, but more importantly to me, the human impact he was making. Having meetups, he goes in London or at K-Swiss in LA, I always remember, where he was able to meet maybe half the people that were standing in line, and then he left. They kicked everyone out of the store, and we were standing outside in the street until 2 a.m. And everyone's different, like there's someone who's like a businessman who's 45 years old, follows Gary on LinkedIn, and he's like, hey, something about his life. He's like, I've made a lot of money, but you made me realize like that's not what I want, and now I left it all, and I'm really spending time with my family. Then you would find like a young kid who's trying to figure out his life and he's curious about everything. And Gary's trying to, and there's just so many different types of people who are attracted to his messages, which is why I think VeeFriends is a good business. That made me believe in him. And I also think that Gary's funny in that there's a cliche word of entrepreneurs. And it's really those ethos. Like Gary wants to hire people that can operate a business.
Yeah.
It's a business within a business. He wants to give people the most trust possible and then watch what they do. And it's actually people, I think you can tell, but like he really gives trust. And it's up for you to take it away from him. And it's just an interesting dynamic. And I've learned a tremendous amount from him. And it's fun to watch the people that I've been around for the last 8-9 years. I'm sure they comment on how I changed, but it's fun for me to watch how they've changed. Aside from just like their vernacular and like mannerisms and things like that, which they all pick up on, we all have little Gary V-isms in ourselves.
Yeah.
But we say we have the same lexicon, but it changes humans. More confident, more kind, more empathetic, better operators, all that stuff.
That's incredible. And so you talked about like there were these moments where I would reflect and decide, okay, is now the time I want to leave? And the answer was always no. In the last about 2 years ago, it sounded like there was another one of these moments, and you had a conversation with Gary about that, and it happened to be really great timing in the sense of, hey, I want to start this new thing called VeeFriends. It's going to be an NFT company, and I want you to run it. And that was it sounds like the growth step that you needed in order to stay and really see an even further future into working.
I mean,
with
in that
what was
even
that
then, December 2021, I could feel I needed to do something different. I'd been 8 years brand director, overleading all of Gary's content team. It's a huge challenge. Every day, like
2020?
2020, 2020, yeah. December 2020. And I wanted to spread my wings. I wanted to spread my wings with Gary. I just didn't know what that was. So we had a conversation like, hey, I'm ready to taste something. He's like, amazing. I need you for another year. We'll figure it out. We had a funny thing and a funny story, which I know that Gary shared a little bit. Right before COVID, and Gary had talked about it even before then, but we were actually about to make the purchase order to buy the figurines. We were going to launch something called Workplace Warriors, which were going to be little tchotchkes that you would hang up on your desk and things of that nature that would be a little inspiration throughout your day. COVID happened. We're like, okay, supply, all that stuff. We're not launching Workplace Warriors. But we had talked about like a sneaker brand, obviously something that would be authentic to Gary, but something that would also excite me and thought that we could both lean into. 2 months later, the only thing he was focused on was Web3 and NFTs. And then it was a quick evolution of like, I think this is where you're going to go. Make sure you learn everything you can. And I looked at it like a win-win. I'm like, okay, I don't know where Web3 is headed. Everything could blow up, but that's okay.
It's half the fun.
Yeah, well, the amount of learnings that I knew what I was about to go through would be a worthwhile investment of my time. I also had no doubt that it was going to be successful, and could anyone have predicted what was going to happen over the course of the next 5-6 months? I don't think so, but it's been quite the ride, and I'm really grateful to be in the position that I am in today.
Well, so you mentioned you've been on a couple Twitter Spaces recently, and one of the times you were talking about, I don't consider VeeFriends an NFT company or even really a Web3 company. We're an IP company. And building out IP in the way that Gary's trying to, and you're helping him with, at the scale that he wants to do it with, what is it, 256 characters now? An absurd
total, including access, 283, 251 Series 1, Series 2.
283. But that's an absurd amount of characters, right? That time is so beyond necessary to be able to develop all of them. you might not even have the ability to be a part of developing all of them, right? This is a massive project. And so like Gary's talked a lot about wanting to, hey, maybe I'm going to purchase an old IP and revamp it. That was the idea of building VaynerMedia and using that as the machine. But hey, now he's going to create his own, which is awesome. However, no one there has necessarily created a bunch of IP outside of personal brands. How different is the task of building out this IP step by step by step, one partnership after another, like brick by brick, compared to anything you guys have done in the past?
You know, I think of it, it's very, very different. Comma, the religion, if you will, is the same. Like being able to communicate a message in a contemporary and relevant way to audiences that you're trying to reach is going to be applied whether you're a personal brand or you're Disney.
Mm.
You know, I think the mechanics and the tactics of how you do that are very different.
Yeah, I mean, it's we're just watching from the outside and trying to piece together the reasoning behind why we do this partnership with this character, why we do this now, why this gets pushed out, and obviously there's some things like it's impossible to get on Snoop Dogg's calendar, I'm sure. It coordinates Snoop Dogg and Gary, but outside of that, just trying to say, okay, like how watching this all be built in real time is really neat because most of us didn't experience seeing that be built out from Disney or some other IP. Whereas there may be some people, like I know I haven't
And
really
that's
seen any meaningful IP be built
well, that's why it's
in my
fun and it's
generation.
challenging. Like there is no comp.
Yeah,
You know, there's
there's no
no comp
roadmap.
because there's no comp for Gary Vee, but um, I can't think of any other IP that had a chat room with 30,000, 300,000 people in real time talking about what we're doing.
Mm.
You know, and us trying to like support, guide, interact with in real time about like here's this, okay, that was off the mark, okay, that was good, we like that, trying to gather all that feedback and also operate. You know, generally it's very insular, the company's operating and then they go see what the market does, but it's a very two-way street while also trying to be a central company that's furthering and developing the IP.
Mm.
And a
What
lot
was
of I'll just touch on like roadmaps and collaborations and timing. It's why, in particular, Gary, I don't want to say he's made fun of, but we've talked a lot about roadmaps. Like, what's the VeeFriends roadmap? This is early on, like
yeah, when everyone
after.
had to have a roadmap.
Yeah, and like roadmaps to me are the same as like an initial pitch deck for a business, which is
Mm.
it's all good and dandy until you get punched in the mouth, right? Or
Mm.
until you have to pivot, or until things change, or another business opportunity comes up, or another partnership comes up, and you rightfully so have to go in that direction because it's actually the best thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, there's definitely a cadence and strategy to what we're doing, and there's also the cadence and strategy of what's happening in the world and what partners come to us at what time and what we want to do with it. So it's just trying to operate the business in real time based on the opportunities at hand.
But I think that's the difference, right? You guys are actually operating a business and have been since day one. You haven't looked at it just as an NFT project, right? And
Well, and that's why it's funny. Like a lot of the questions that I would get asked or Gary gets asked, Gary's a serial entrepreneur. You know, this is what he does. I think this is also why VeeFriends community is bullish on VeeFriends because they're bullish on Gary and they
yeah.
understand that he's a real business, he's an operator, um, and that's that.
What have been some of the things that you noticed that I guess let me rephrase. What was that first year of you launch VeeFriends Series 1, you have all the fun stuff with the mint and getting pushed off and then changing the mint price because ETH went up and that was a whole thing in itself. But what like post
And then
mint?
ETH crashed.
Oh my
Fun
gosh.
fact.
I hope y'all cashed out immediately before then. But what was that first year like of operating VeeFriends and when we're also in the midst of all of this bull market hype, speculative, Gary was obviously very excited about a lot of things going on, and I don't think he fully understood at first his level of influence in the space and seemed to quickly figure that out and got very quiet since then, which I think was very responsible. But definitely missed out on some of the
I
Like
mean, it
2
was
2 a.m. scrolling through crypto skulls and trying to mint something because I'm like, he's talking about it. Everyone else is going to speculate on it now.
it was a time unlike anything else.
It
From a
feels like a
macro.
dream,
Yeah, I
honestly.
mean, like you're and I's just in the space, and I literally just got goosebumps thinking about it because your and I's memory. If I see you at a park when we're both 80 years old, we'll catch up about VeeFriends, we'll catch up about this podcast, and then we'll just talk about that moment in time in general.
Mm,
In general, and we'll just think about how insane, exciting, different it was compared to anything we've ever felt.
yeah.
And it's why Gary, I think, was so bullish on it just before then, because he had already lived through it. Like, I think you and I are of the same age where I remember the first time I really interacted with the internet in a Web 2 way. I think of it as AOL Instant Messenger.
Yep.
But it was before then where there was a lot of money being dumped into AOL and these big .coms, and then it all blew up. And it's why, a lot of venture capital firms and things of that nature are really bullish on Web3 because it's pattern recognition for them. They lived through it in Web2. Some of them missed out on it, and a lot of the naysayers in Web2 or the rationales to why not, it's the same behavior that was happening in Web3. So it's interesting. And then outside of the space with Web3 and us thinking about it in that way, it was really just trying to execute as quickly as possible on the things that we did want to execute on, which was specific to the community,
Yeah.
which was difficult. It's like, oh shit, we don't have anyone's email. We have a lot of access tokens. And we knew all this
Yeah.
stuff going into it, and we also knew that we would figure it out. But it was a lot of bubblegum and tape to get to the place of like really being able to communicate and set up a successful access experiences. And of course, there was VCON looming, right after the mint ended. It's staffing, who are the people we're really going to hire.
Yeah.
And then it's nonstop until I'll see you at Minnesota.
Yeah. Well, you said bubble wrap and tape. I mean, it's a startup within a big organization, but it is still a startup, right? That you're operating. And you had talked about pattern recognition, something that Gary and your team did really well that I absolutely loved during that time was educating and onboarding. And it's something that's come up quite a few times. It's something that there's still not enough of in the space. And I imagine will be like reiterated as things change, UI gets better, and it starts to start the next bull run, we'll call it. Something that I was really bummed about when I remember sitting in my college dorm, just thinking about, I want to do something in business. I want to have my own company. I want to take advantage of things from an economic standpoint. But I feel like I missed the biggest thing in the world, which was the invention of the internet. I missed taking advantage of the, pre-dot-com bubble, the crash, and like all of the things that were on sale back then. I could have made my fortune then. I'm so tech forward. My first job was at Best Buy, and so I just have that ingrained in my DNA at this point. And it was always really bummed about it. And then when I hear Gary start going off about this new Web3 thing and relating it back to like early 2000s, like late 90s internet, I'm just sitting here like, oh my God, something's happening. Because at that point I had followed Gary for a few years, and I really, he doesn't always resonate with everybody, but he really resonated with me. It was on a motivational compilation I was listening to, and I just kept hearing this one dude that was just super loud and cursing and very different than everybody else that I was listening to at the time. I was like, who the hell is this guy? And it was Gary, and I think he had, I don't know, maybe like 80,000 or 100,000 people on Instagram at that point. So it wasn't like super early, but it was a lot earlier than now. And so I had enough time to build up trust in him. He starts talking about this Web3 thing. He now is saying like, hey, we're doing VeeFriends. Here's all the things you need to learn about, whatever, right? And one thing that was interesting about him at that time is he's never asked anybody for money. He's like promoted his book, but that's really about the extent of it. Most people were selling courses and like just stripping value from the market, and all he was doing was pouring it in. And so I almost felt obligated to buy VeeFriend purely because of that. But at the same time, I'm like, I get to go to a conference for 3 years. I wasn't thinking about making money with this stuff. All I was focused on is, hey, I get to go to a conference with like-minded people interested in the tech, and it's all backed by Gary. And I get to invest in him. Cool. Let's do it. And so that was the no-brainer for me. But I bought ETH at like 2,500, so right before it started to skyrocket, and it jumped up. I made like $2,000-3,000 without even buying a VeeFriend. And I'm like, shoot, is ETH gonna go to whatever? And that's a way to make money. Maybe I shouldn't buy a VeeFriend. And luckily, I just made the call to do it. But at the time, I really like considered keeping it in ETH because ETH was gonna go to the moon.
Man, it's such an important, that last minute of everything you just said, I think is a really, really important clip that a lot of people could learn from and look back on. Because obviously we're in a down market.
Mm.
But I think a lot of the ethos and value and proposition of what Web3 is way more the first point, not the second point. It's a hybrid of the both, right? But you
100%.
got into VeeFriends because you wanted to go to a conference with like-minded people, and it was going to be a valuable community to be a part of,
Yes.
not because you thought it was going to be a financial instrument. And I think that's the, like, yes, Web3 is democratizing ownership, and yes, there's collectability and investing components in that. But I'm bullish on Web3 because it's digitizing communities and it's creating a different form of ownership within a community. It's just fascinating. I was thinking about that when you said that, and then I clearly remember ETH skyrocketing, and it was weird because Gary, were pumped. He was like, "Holy shit! I think a lot of people probably just made a lot of money on ETH because we've been spending the last 5 weeks educating them of like, what is Ethereum? How does one acquire Ethereum? What is an NFT? How does one get an NFT?" The launch gets pushed back. Meanwhile, ETH every day is going up, and then I think we actually launched, which we weren't happy about. It was getting too high. Like it was messing with our pricing. We priced the floor price of a VeeFriend, which is around $2,000, was 100% only predicated on how much do we think Gabriel should have to pay to come to VCON for 3 years.
Yeah.
Nothing else. Flash forward to August, floor of VeeFriend was like around like something astronomical,
It was absurd, right? Like I remember sitting there because I had never done any kind of investing at this point. This is one of my first investments, we'll call it. But again, like I didn't buy it for the investment. I bought it because I wanted to be a part of this community. And it was more about access and community for me than anything. But I remember sitting there and I'm like, every day I was just like doing these calculations of, oh my gosh, the floor price on this thing is 3, 4, 5, 10 ETH. And I'm sitting here looking at, if I sold this right now, I've got an offer for like $20,000. I've never seen that much money before in my life, right? And I know a lot of people that they were having similar experiences, and I just kept thinking, man, like, should I just sell this? Like, is this like worth it? Should I take the money? I could really use it, and I didn't need it, but obviously that any kind of money like that starts to become impactful in one way or another, right? So, but the reason that I kept it was purely because of the initial reason I bought it. The same reason that it wasn't worth cashing out on that ETH or staying in ETH and hoping it goes to the moon to make money, because it was not about the money. It wasn't money couldn't buy me or replace like what I'd be missing out by being a part of the journey in the community. And again, Gary's done so much for me personally, mentally, he doesn't even know about, and inspired me in so many ways. The whole team has, and all I wanted to do was be like show my gratitude in a way like that too, on top of it, and be a part of whatever he was building.
I love that. It's powerful.
It's awesome, man. So we've got this incredible mint and journey of that. Sounds like it was a lot of like every day was, okay, what can we do to like keep building this thing? It was really a day by day experience that led you up to VCON.
It was so much, like Gary brainstormed and drafted out what is VeeFriends with the thesis and principle of trying to create a blueprint NFT project. And I'm surprised by honestly how few of how few players are in the space right now. I'm taking this from Gary. It's something that he said as well, but by way of that, it also struck me. I would have assumed there'd be way more players such as Gary, or rather popular cultures, figures, celebrities with their own NFT projects,
Like
which
building
have
out IP in a similar way that you guys are.
not necessarily IP, but access.
Mm.
The idea of you going to Taylor Swift's, getting a VIP ticket to go hang out with Taylor Swift, which has a redemption for next year, where you can actually go get the experience, be pumped, and then sell that experience, maybe even for more than what you bought it for in the first place, is a wild new frontier for anyone who has an audience with a deep connection.
Like Loud Punks, like what Rolling Loud's doing.
100%. Rolling Loud is from an enterprise perspective, which I think is going to continue to grow, specifically within sports. Like I'm bullish on the idea of NBA having NFT as tickets. Maybe not next year, maybe not in 2025, but in the inevitable future, having a digital collectible that was my ticket, that then is a memento for the game that I saw Luka hit a game winner, makes a lot of sense to me. I'm just more thinking about personal brands and celebrities that have a real deep connection with that person because of the motivation, inspiration, and just artistic inspiration that they give them. And to be able to like buy an NFT that gives me access to that person that I can just hold on to and remember that time, and it will stay with me and I can pass it on to my kid, or that I could sell because it has continued utility, is something that I think we'll see, but we haven't really seen it to the degree that I thought we would have. It's also because I think Web3 is hard, right? That's what they say, but
yeah,
that was a lot of what was happening in the early days. Was aside from the IP development, character development, trying to build out a creative team and a creative process for storytelling with 283 characters. It was 200. It wasn't 203 with the new characters, but over 200 characters, and the events. We had all these access events too, so it was a lot of trying to figure out how to structure, manage, staff a lot of the complexities that we have at VeeFriends that are very specific to VeeFriends and no other project.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, the application across all of these different industries that just make sense. You talked about sports, music as well, and there's a lot of different ways people have played around with the tech in terms of launching the songs as NFTs versus access to their events, and we haven't seen a lot of that. You guys work with a lot of artists, or like have relationships with a lot of artists, and you haven't seen, like, what are your thoughts on just the NFTs when it comes to music and how they should be applied? Is it just the access thing being the main value there?
There's a lot of policy that I'm excited for, hopefully, that will come in due time from the powers that be in Washington.
Sure.
That I think will help create more clarity. But I personally, as someone who loves discovering new music artists, anyone that really spends time with me knows that that's a hobby of mine, that I love putting on new artists. I have a little Mike Boyd in me myself. Music is my favorite use case. I don't know if you've checked out Royal before, and there's also, I think, Sound XYZ, which is more just a digital collectible with music playing inside with it. Royal is playing the game that I'm excited to see if we can actually expand upon, which is minting an NFT that actually gives you streaming royalties of that song.
Gives me the streaming royalties by buying.
Yeah, so it's out right now. Like they released a track with Nas. If you minted that track based on the streams across Apple, YouTube, Spotify, you get a little quarterly payout.
Interesting.
And if you think about maybe not Nas, but it's Post Malone, and it's Post Malone's first album when no one heard of him, and it's in perpetuity because you own that NFT.
Right.
Then it becomes like really fascinating because Post Malone blows up, and maybe you don't like his music anymore, and you think he's sold out, but you don't even care anymore because the bigger he gets, the bigger that first collectible that is also giving you in perpetuity streaming rights. And again, I think it's tough. Like the numbers, and you've probably seen some social content around like how little the payout, how much streams you need to get to make like one penny. So we're not talking insane amount of money, but it's enough to get fans really, really excited and create a different fan-artist relationship, which I think furthers the elimination of middlemen, which is
Well,
what I
and
think the ethos is of the
it
internet in
also
general.
incentivizes your early followers to be your advocates, right?
Yep.
Be like that this is where community comes back into play, is like your early community supporting, being your brand voice in a similar way that I would consider similar in what like we're doing for VeeFriends. We're constantly trying to talk about it, we're spreading the word about it, we're posting about it, wearing swag, trying to just amplify this voice. And I'm really curious because being a part of that community, it can feel like all we hear is the community talking and not a lot outside of that. But you and Gary and the team travel so much and you're doing all of these other events that we don't even always see or hear about. So what has that been like from your perspective in terms of outside of the immediate VeeFriends holders, VeeFriends community? Um, where are you seeing like really interesting traction coming from that in terms of spreading the brand? Obviously, we're only 18 months in, but
I mean, I can tell you from a B2B perspective, people are interested. When they look at what we've done uh, with our collaborations with Mattel, with Constellation Brands, with Anwar Carrots at Nordstrom's. I mean, Nordstrom's was it was also the first apparel drop we've ever did, but Nordstrom's has never seen a hoodie be sold out in stores across the country in less than 72 hours. You know,
really,
like that's a case study.
huh?
Yeah, it was unfathomable. Like rabid fans like grabbing up the hoodie
Before they even announced that it was available for sale,
because
it was selling
The
out.
Discord leaked, and I like saying that. It's just exemplary of the times we're living in. Is like we couldn't even announce the sale. Someone found it on Nordstrom's link, which and that's what happens when you're working with big retailers and partners. They
Yeah.
had it up on the site. It was unlisted, but someone just searched like carrots and it populated and they shared it in the Discord.
Oh
So
yeah.
people bought it online, was sold out. Then it was dispersed across the Nordstrom locations, sold out. And then Macy's, Toys R Us. So from like a B2B perspective, a lot. From a consumer audience perspective, general intrigue, and that's why I, I tell the story of like the intellectual property started as an IP, started as a NFT, but that was the birth to then storytell in all different forms and fashions, whether it might be a podcast or a TikTok or a short film on Netflix.
So I'm like trying to break down VeeFriends because there's obviously a lot of sides of it, right? The B2B, B2C, B2B2C, NFT side, the community side.
Events.
If events, yeah, that's a whole other topic we'll get into. But I'm trying to think about this. Okay, if I take NFTs out of it, right? You've got you and Gary building out this intellectual property. He has these drawings, just like Disney did back in the day, and now we're bringing them to life. We've got these like characterized animations of them that we can actually put into movies, TV shows, etc. Right? And so that happens with or without the NFT. So in a sense, you bring this NFT in, and what part does that like? How connected is it to the results of the IP versus like having really not like the growth of the IP not necessarily impacting it? Is there no scenario where it doesn't? I'm just trying to think about
The growth
is
of
it
the IP and the NFT.
yeah like is
Yeah,
it
well,
the
it's interesting,
equivalent of
right?
having the
I
original
literally just got
drawing?
off an interesting call where I was talking about this, about like focusing outside of Web3 and NFTs,
Yeah,
I also lean back in because I'm like, we also really, 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 really believe in the future of Web3
of
and the
course.
fact that VeeFriends also created VCON and that we also did create the GiftGo token and these access tokens because we do believe in 5, 10, 15 years time, people are going to look back at 2021 and 2022 and be like, holy shit, that was a blueprint. That was a
Yeah.
model. That is a collectible forever.
Mm.
If the public can equate VeeFriends into almost the same lexicon or awareness as you might say Hanna-Barbera or Pokemon or Disney, then we're onto something.
Mm. So it's kind of, I mean, to your point, you're kind of doing this push-pull thing of like, we started in Web3 in a very early stage, and the more conversations I have with people who are really in it, the more I feel like we are so early. And we used to say that, and I had like some kind of idea of, oh yeah,
I see all the tweets, but like the biggest leaders in the space in Web3 and NFTs have been in it for 2 years,
yeah.
for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, you
Which,
have
which is
the
very
people who
like,
read the Bitcoin white paper occasionally, but not a lot of
yeah,
them.
like I don't know. I say this a lot, but just as to be an example of how I think about it, I don't think NFTs will be a word in 6 years' time. Like
I
it's
agree.
not a word that people are going to say.
I don't think we'll say
I'm
Web
bullish on
three.
what
We
I'm
don't say
seeing
Web
on.
two. We're the only ones that say Web two. When I remember when like social media started coming out, we didn't call it Web two then.
No.
I think we're just using it as reference points more than
Yeah,
anything.
I'm bullish on the digital collectible that is happening on Instagram right now.
Mm-hmm.
Drift, who I really like a lot, Drifter Shoots. He was a former GIFCO. He launched, I think it was like one of the first ones that Instagram did, but it's very
Mm-hmm.
seamless. Like he posted, you could buy it right then, and from there I've seen a lot of influencers, creators, artists who otherwise would never have been into NFTs or digital collectibles because they don't have the time to study a smart contract and OpenSea and all of that nature. But now you can just set it up on your Instagram account, and your fans can develop a relationship with you. And I'm also really excited about that because $5 NFTs, $20 NFTs are also really cool. You know, to be able to like just have a collectible from someone that you admire, an artist that you like, is
Well,
awesome.
the only way we look at NFTs right now, for the most part, is in the speculative fashion, right? We look at them as basically securities. We're not looking at them from a utility perspective. Well, we talk about utility, but we really just relate that as a reason to speculate on it, the price increasing, right? It's not. But the way that I bought VeeFriends was for the utility and the community. It was for the access. It had nothing to do, genuinely, for making money on it, right? And even
Yeah.
right now, you can argue that it's about this mint price, right,
Yep.
for floor. So it's interesting because, to your point, like $5 NFTs, $10 NFTs. Think about what people buy digital on Fortnite and Roblox, right? And they don't own any of that. That server crashes and goes down, all of their money is gone, right? It's like FTX all over again, except it's legal. And so now we're getting into conversations about, hey, you can actually own this and ultimately build out this world where it's interoperable and you can bring it to other places, and you can sell it if you don't want it anymore. You don't like that skin anymore, somebody else will buy it from you, maybe not for what you bought it for initially, but in the real world, that's how that works. If I buy a watch and it's not a watch that just natively retains all of its value, and I sell it 2 years later, it's got scratches, a little more beat up, I'm probably going to sell it for less than I bought it for, and I'm okay with that. But people don't look at the digital collectible like that. I feel like the conversation still, even in this bear market, all about it being like the speculators are still here.
How many episodes have you done on your podcast?
You will be. I did one, number 11 yesterday. You will be number 12 when I release it.
Nice. I'm excited for you. You should keep. I think you're very articulated, and I think what you just said is exactly right, and a profound example that I think most of the public can relate to. The interoperability across gameplays. Roblox goes down, all your money goes away. NFTs are a remedy to that. Is exactly the thesis as to why I'm bullish on Web3 and NFTs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm bullish on blockchain. I mean, I had a conversation with you in Miami about the role that I was accepting with Art Blocks, right? And I start on Monday. Super excited.
Let's go, man.
Yeah, I'm pumped. It's official,
Congratulations.
official. Thank you. But a lot of the conversations they're having with people are around that, around like actual use cases, not speculative things. You had
Yeah.
talked about like sports teams. They're actively having conversations with owners of sports teams about how do we use this technology that we're calling NFTs and implement it into our business practices, using it in a way that's innovative and has us stand out, but also we can continue to have a closer relationship with the people who come to our games. Sports is such an easy one. I mean, geez, on the extreme end, look at how Gary and the Jets are, that relationship, right? Like, people have that relationships in sports a lot of the time. And so there's a big use case for leveraging this technology in that.
100%. It's, sports, it's human connection and emotion. People express themselves.
And that's what clicked with me when Gary was talking about it. He's like, I wasn't big into he bought Ethereum and Bitcoin and whatever back in the day and just playing around with it, but he's like, I'm not a finance guy, which I completely relate on. I don't want to play in that. I never traded stocks. I never got into all of that. I was like, but when he talked about assets and the emotional connection that you have there and the things that you can do, when he started talking about the smart contract, those started turning the wheels in my head. I'm like, oh my gosh, this just makes so much sense. There's
I don't
no
want to look
way.
at a spreadsheet with numbers.
Yeah.
Give me a spreadsheet with numbers and beautiful characters. I'm in.
We can argue whether or not the characters were beautiful from Gary's drawing. Some of them I think are actually. Gary made a point, actually. I think it was at the Epic event in Miami, and he said, people talked a lot of shit about my drawings and my doodles. It's like, but I want to see you doodle any better. Like, his doodles were actually really solid. There's not a single character that you can't tell what it is. When I did my NFT at the Epic event, it was a stick figure, right? Because that's the extent of my drawing.
I'll give you a tidbit. I would say the biggest learning that I had from Gary, March 2021 to end of VeeFriends, the last minute of VeeFriends, call it June 1st, 2021, was his utter conviction and belief in himself outside of anything else. I mean, he had some longtime business friends that were laughing about the idea of VeeFriends, literally joking, what the fuck are you doing drawing? And it was just awe-inspiring to watch. Even during launch, before launch, when the site wasn't working, we weren't anywhere we needed to go. I was extremely, extremely anxious. I felt like it was all on me, and we had a small team. It was us and the guys at Nameless were in the thick of it, all-nighters trying to get it right. Yeah. And Gary, to his credit, was like, "Don't worry, we got this." That's awesome. And he just had utter belief and confidence. And now it's so fun because he sends some texts to friends that were making fun of his doodles now. For sure.
Well, it's cool too because I feel like that's translated into the team. It's definitely apparent in you and the way that you're engaging with the community more now, and you're addressing some conversations that can be tough, right? You're getting feedback that isn't always big pats on the back. It's, hey, these are things that we want to see, and they're hard to navigate, right? You definitely can't navigate them effectively if you don't have raw belief in what you're building, the values behind what you're building, that, hey, if the community feels we did something that is in alignment with those, we're going to address it and we're going to fix it if we need to, and we're going to be more thoughtful going forward. And every conversation that I've heard you have with a community member, I've just been incredibly impressed at the way that you're not navigating in the sense of dismissing it like it's not a big deal, but just actually being transparent and receptive to the feedback. And we've already seen that be reflected in executions going forward.
One, thank you. That really means a lot to me. Two, we have a lot of work to do, myself specifically. Yeah. I think it's really tough to balance transparency and accountability, and doing so contextually and appropriately with the most level of thought. Mm-hmm. I want to respond to tweets. I want to engage in the Discord. I want to have public spaces, but I also want to navigate the business internally and think about what the right strategies are for us and how we can build this IP with people such as yourself and the great brand ambassadors of the VeeFriends community that we have.
Well, something I was talking about yesterday in a space is I noticed it seems like over the last few months you've been significantly more active on social, whether it's joining Twitter Spaces, like having conversations with the community, even just tweeting out, posting out, sharing other people's stuff. Has that been intentional compared to like the past few years? 'Cause I said, like, I was really surprised. I never even noticed it at first, but surprised that you wouldn't have been a lot more active on social. Obviously, you're doing a lot of the operational things, and the last thing you might have time for is to go and post on Twitter. But curious at like what your thought process has been around that.
Yeah, I think it's a balance of my personal life and my professional life, and I'm trying to figure out that balance. And I think it's to the point that I need to be intentional about it, and I feel comfortable doing that. And as someone who's worked with Gary for the last 10 years, I know that the only thing that you can do is be authentic and true to yourself, or else everyone will sniff it out, and it's not going to work for you. You're not going to do it consistently. So I think it's finding the balance of how do I do that for myself authentically, and how do I do that for myself authentically for VeeFriends and the VeeFriends community. And I'm excited. I think I'm going to continue to share, join spaces more, talk more about my personal endeavors, my personal hobbies, share posts of me going to yoga, hanging out with my friends, my family, but also talk about what we're doing at VeeFriends. You know, we had a great company town hall today, virtually.
Yeah.
51 VeeFriends employees. And I opened it up just so
You're
humbled.
up to 51 now?
The level of love and kindness that we have at the company, and also expertise in our events, in our creative, in our community departments, I'm so excited about. And now it's up to us to actually operationalize that enthusiasm, that passion, and that expertise to do what we need to do to build VeeFriends to the IP that everyone wants it to be.
I love that. I mean, you feel that.
I mean,
through
VCON, we were 13 people. We were 13 people at VCON. We were 13 people at VCON, which was we were understaffed, but we were understaffed, and I was okay with it to that point because I trusted to the core ounce of my soul and my body everyone that I had on my team, and that level of trust created the opportunity for sheer speed of like, hey, go do this. I'll see you in a week.
Yeah.
You know, but it also created opportunities where people needed more support. And so I'm really glad heading into 2023 that we have the team and staff that we have in place now. And I couldn't be more excited to tell the stories. You know, it's funny with me in content, like by heart, I am a storyteller.
Yeah.
I love being creative. If anyone who's worked with me knows, when I get into a room and we want to dissect content and talk about how it can be better, I will be the most critical, and I would do so in what I think is like a really strategic, relevant way. And that's my bread and butter, and that's what I've done for 10 years. But personally, generally, I'm just busy, and I don't make the time for it. But I'm excited to do more of it for my personal brand and do more of it for VeeFriends and be a bigger public figure as the president of VeeFriends.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it aligns with you and your values, please do, because I know we all enjoy it.
Thanks.
As we're wrapping up here, I want to rapid fire a couple of things. VCON 2023, what are we most excited for outside of maybe a little bit more sleep as you get ramped up for it?
Reconnecting with old faces, hopefully seeing new faces. It's going to be way more, I would say, business heavy in the right ways. There's a lot of Web3 artists, creators in 2022, which I think was awesome. It was so cool to sort of like put everyone on in a way. And I don't say that to be like egotistical. I say that to just like, it was so fun to see like people have a stage and give an audience and like have an experience that they otherwise wouldn't have had as an artist. But I'm really excited to see more talks from CEOs, entrepreneurs, people that have really built businesses or have a technical background as a lawyer in Web3. Just thinking about more thoughtful ways to really more lean into business, marketing, and popular culture to bring value to the VeeFriends community, who I think generally is a large group of creators, entrepreneurs, and self-starters.
Yeah.
And I'm also excited for the entertainment. Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, I think the entertainment's going to be really dope.
Yeah. No, I'm super excited about that too. And no, I was excited to hear that we were going more like traditional conference in the sense of content, right? Because to our point earlier, it's not Web3 in its own realm. It's building businesses leveraging this new technology, right?
Yep.
And so it just makes sense having conversations about both, not like or.
Yep.
And I was thinking about the attendance rate and like the people who are going to come back. I know I'm speaking for myself, but a lot of people that I've talked to are now, we've all gone and now we want to bring other people with us. So we're bringing extra friends, we're bringing significant others. There's plenty more seats and tickets to go around. So we're just going to keep buying them up on secondary or sharing with each other. So we can all, it'll be the same core set of people, I feel like, for the most part. But we're going to have all of our friends and family that we like. You have to experience this because
You
it
just
was
got me so hyped.
such a next level experience. I'm bringing
No
my
one had
best
any
friend.
idea what VCON was going to be.
Yeah, I'm bringing
You
my
know,
best
that's
friend
what
and my girlfriend, and I couldn't be more excited for them.
that makes me so happy, man. And I feel like hearing you say that is just validation for me. I feel like that's going to be true for a lot of community members.
Yeah,
Selfishly for me, actually, I was nervous and anxious, and I was dead set on throwing an event that everyone will remember for the rest of their lives, where I did not invite my mother and my brother to VCon. I was like, you
yeah,
guys can sit this one out. I was just going to be thinking about them a lot.
yeah,
So personally, I'm also excited now that we have a real events division and I have a little more experience under my belt throwing a
yeah.
conference this scale at VCon. I'm going to have my family there as well.
That's so awesome. Yeah. I'm really excited because I think that's only going to more so solidify the like what did he call it? Summer camp bond that we're all going to have going into VCon 2024. Right? Like I
Yeah.
already feel that way, especially doing these other satellite events like Miami and other ones in between, and getting to like have that extra touch point. Like going into this next year, all I'm going to be doing is giving hugs to everybody. It was already like that in Miami,
Yeah, yeah,
especially
yeah.
at the VeeFriends takeover, which I was super pumped about. Jeremy was on stage and he looked at me. He was like, "Dude, you haven't stopped smiling since you walked in."
Hmm.
And I'm like, I'm genuinely just so happy to be around this energy, these types of people, like just so kind and caring and humble and just incredible community that we've built. So that's been amazing. One other thing, it was one from or a question from a organized ostrich holder, and he actually has a company called the Ostrich App, and so he was curious about how members of the VeeFriends community and complementary businesses can partner with VeeFriends in terms of like if they want to offer some cool perks or any kind of partnership or experiences for VeeFriends holders or community members. Like how do they navigate like when they're building their businesses, opening up dialogue around conversations of partnerships and even just like working with the brand to help get more engagement from the community.
Yep. Daniel at VeeFriends. Daniel Donore is the head of community at
Isn't he an
VeeFriends.
ostrich holder too? I think that's his
He
profile
is an
picture.
ostrich holder. That is
Yeah,
so funny.
yeah,
Uh, I love that's the case. He's the head of the community. He is putting forth all propositions, inputs, feedback, ideas. And
mm,
again, a lot of these would be then funneled to our business development and commerce team. But he is the touch point for the community. Daniel is an amazing human. He's been with us since I think around September, November last year. He's learned a tremendous amount, and I have an extreme amount of trust and faith in him. And he's your guy. Daniel, I'm sorry, but you might get a lot of emails and tweets and texts and Discord
don't.
messages now. But he is the point person, and he has a lot of. And I feel confident saying that, one, because I wanted to give him flowers and love, and just shout him out. But two, he has a great support system around him, and he
Yeah.
is the man for that.
Yeah, I mean the community team is just next level. I don't know how the hell Corso does it. I'm
Well, he does it because shout out Corso too. Shout out the
yeah,
whole mod team. Shout out.
honestly,
There, and I don't want to speak for him, but I think he does it because he likes it.
yeah,
And that's why I was so pumped. I think you were still on the fringes a little bit when we were speaking about Miami, about the job opportunity that you had.
hmm,
But it seems like you chased your interest in your hobby and your passion.
yeah,
And I know the combo that we had around it, but I think day to day, you might feel more fulfilled. You might do better work. You might be working more hours because you're just not even looking at the clock.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
I was talking to somebody from there today, and I was like, they're like, okay, well, we don't expect you to do any of this stuff till Monday. I'm like, dude, I'm spending all my afternoons in Web3 anyways. I'm like, this is like, I'm gonna have it all done. And one, I'm excited, but also like, this is just where I want to spend my time. I want to spend my time building this type of stuff, and it scratches the itch of like business building because it's so early stage that while you might have one specific title, you also kind of like your help is appreciated across the org, right?
Yep.
And that also opens up opportunities to like build relationships with people internally, but also getting to figure out, okay, like we're all thinking about using this tech in a really applicable way for a good cause, right? To do something really meaningful and that can really make an impact long term. So it's really exciting. So I can understand or start to understand how Corso could do that if he actually does really like it. Shout out Corso.
Yeah.
Sweet, man. Thank you so much for your time. One final question as we're wrapping up.
Please.
What are you most excited for going into 2023 outside of VCON? Like when it comes to whether it's just Web3
to
as
see
a
shorts,
whole,
characters, and content that make me laugh, cry, and smile, and that I want to share with friends. That's the only thing I care about.
Really? From VeeFriends specifically?
100%.
I'm really excited to see all the content that gets created from them as well.
That's it, man. That's the only thing I think about every fucking morning.
Really?
That's it.
Why?
I think the success of the company is predicated on it. One. Two, it's my natural state of what I really love to see and do. Is to really think about how does Patient Panda talk, feel, sound, what story is really going to strike a kid to think about patience, or what story with Kind Warrior is really going to make someone think about how they can deploy kindness to someone who's being mean to them. And I feel like we can affect not just the community in a deeper, more powerful way, but young children, teens, and adults. Gary, as you've said, and when you're watching him talk, is such a contradictory in a lot of ways. And I think my task and our creative team's task is really to bottle up what you find and what we all identify in Gary and disperse it in the 283 characters that we have. And I feel like if I was going to rank us right now, we're 0 out of 10 in doing that. And that's what I'm most excited about, and that's the only thing I'm really, really focused on for next year.
Love it. We'll keep an eye out for all those shorts and character development, and we'll make sure to share them with our friends and family too. Thank you so much for your time, Andy. This has been wonderful.
Absolutely, Gabriel. I really appreciate it. And I told you before, man, I'm bullish on your podcast now. I think you got to, if you want inspo, man, Joe Rogan, I think has he does have the largest podcast, I think in the world.
Still that. Yeah.
He reaches so many people. Go watch the first 100 episodes of his podcast.
The first 100 isn't there like?
I mean, just click on a random one.
Yeah.
Click on a random one, or click on a random one of Gary's Wine Library TV as a different.
I've seen those. I've seen the first ones.
Bro, like it's like you're in your infancy of really dialing in on like how to interview, how to articulate, how to book guests, how to promote. You got to just do the reps, and I'm telling you, you got like, you have the skill set to do it based on your education, based on how you can communicate. I'm excited for you, and I'll leave that to you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thanks, brother. Talk soon.